Hello everyone, this is Knowledge Topper and welcome to today's lecture on vendor risk management. In this lecture, we will explore the concept of vendor risk management, its importance and best practices as well, okay? If you are watching my video for the first time, I just want to let you know that I believe in real life situational based examples to clear concept of my students. So to understand our today's topic on vendor risk management, we will illustrate our concept and use a real life example that will help us understand the implications of vendor risk management in a practical context. Okay, so let's dive in. First of all, if we discuss the definition of vendor risk management to have a basic understanding, so vendor risk management refers to the systematic approach of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk associated with third party vendors that provide products, services, or support to an organization. It involves understanding the potential impact these vendors can have on business operations, reputation, and compliance with applicable regulations. Okay, basically, in an increasingly interconnected business environment nowadays, especially, organization rely heavily on numerous vendors to support their operations. Okay, however, this reliance introduces potential risk to the organization that must be effectively managed to safeguard organizational resilience. Okay, let's understand this particular vendor risk management concept with the help of an example. Okay, suppose there is a bank, a financial institution named as XYZ Bank. Okay, we all know that banks relies on a third party IT services provider to manage its core banking system. Okay, so we assume same in our case of XYZ Bank. Okay, that XYZ Bank relies on a third party IT services provider to manage its core banking system. Okay, that basically includes customer data, transaction processing, and digital banking platform as well. Okay, so as we discussed in our definition, that vendor risk management refers to the systematic approach of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk associated with third party vendors. So we follow the same process and firstly try to identify all possible vendor risk that XYZ banks are exposed to. Okay, the first one is data breach. In this risk, they have identified that the IT services providers have access to customer data that introduces the risk of a data breach. Okay, and potentially leading to financial losses and reputational damage as well, and legal consequences as well. The second risk that they have identified is service interruption risk. Okay, basically if the IT services provider experiences a system failure or prolonged downtime, XYZ banks ability to process transactions and provide essential banking services could be compromised. So in our first step, XYZ Bank's risk management team have identified these two possible vendor risk. Okay, now they need to assess the impact and consequences of these two identified vendor risk. Okay, so the first impact could be financial loss. Basically, if data breaches out, it could result in financial losses due to legal penalties, regulatory fines, customer compensation, and costs associated with remediation and recovery as well. Okay, the second impact could be reputational damage as well, like basically due to any breach or service interruption in both of our identified vendor risk, it can erode customer trust as well as damage XYZ bank's reputation and also result in the loss of clients and market share as well. Okay, the third impact could be regulatory non-compliance. Okay, basically due to failure to manage vendor risk effectively, it can lead to violations of regulatory requirements. Okay, and hence subjecting XYZ bank to additional penalties and also scrutiny from regulatory authorities. Okay, so in first two steps, risk management team have identified and assess XYZ bank's vendor risk. Now in third process, they will create best practices to manage these risks. Okay, so at number one, we have due diligence and vendor selection. Okay, in this step, what XYZ bank do, they perform thorough evaluation. Okay, in which they conduct a comprehensive assessment of potential vendors, including their financial stability, tracking their records as well, and security practices, and most importantly regulatory compliance as well. Okay, they also need to improve contractual provisions as well, like by establishing clear expectations, service level agreements, and security requirements, and provisions for termination and transition in vendor contracts as well. Okay, the other best practice that XYZ bank creates to manage vendor risk is ongoing monitoring and assessment. Okay, firstly they have to regularly assess vendor risk based on factors such as criticality of services, access to sensitive data, and potential impact on business operation as well. Okay, then they will also need to ensure the continuous evaluation of their vendors performance. Okay, like their adherence to contractual obligations and all the compliance with relevant policies and regulations. Okay, the other important thing that suddenly comes in my mind is the incident reporting as well. Okay, like if I can include here, like basically XYZ bank also need to establish mechanism for prompt reporting and escalation of any incidents, breaches, or disruptions that caused by the vendor. Okay, the third best practice to manage vendor risk is the contingency planning. Okay, where they need to ensure appropriate backup mechanism, and also need to ensure that redundancy plans are in place. Okay, to mitigate the impact of vendor service disruptions or failures as well. Okay, the fourth possible best practice to manage vendor risk is compliance and regulatory considerations. Okay, basically XYZ bank need to always stay updated with regulatory requirements. Okay, related to vendor management, and also ensure compliance through effective oversight and reporting. Okay, they also need to ensure that their vendors follow industry best practices to provide best security for data protection, including encryption, access controls, and adherence to applicable privacy regulations as well. Okay, so all these are the best practices or vendor risk mitigation strategies that XYZ bank needs to follow. Okay, similarly you can also follow the same process to manage the risk of your organization, where firstly you need to identify all the possible vendor related risk. Then you have to assess those risks, and then you have to create best practices to mitigate that particular vendor related risk, and always make sure that you review all the risk mitigation strategies time to time, so you can better manage all the risk associated with your organization effectively. Okay, so that is all about vendor risk management. In conclusion, I just want to say that vendor risk management is very crucial for organizations, especially to maintain a resilience in today's interconnected business landscape. Okay, through the example of XYZ bank that I have taught you, we have examined the potential risk and consequences associated with that particular vendor relationships, and also explored best practices to mitigate that particular risk as well. So that is all about vendor risk management. I hope you like today's video. If you like this video, thumbs up. Do appreciate our hard work in creating this particular video for you by subscribing our channel Knowledge Topper, as well as like our Facebook page, and do join our Facebook group as well, where you will find a lot of good material not just related to these topics but from many other different topics as well. Okay, I have already created a lot of videos on risk management. If you want to check out that, I will make sure that I will attach a playlist link for that in the description of this video. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much everyone. It's time to say bye bye.